Oh, and I forgot to mention it's that sex offender.
What?
You know, we saw the picture on the flyer of that sex offender guy. That's him. He's cool.
You invited a sex offender over for Seder? Are you out of your mind?
Well, it was kind of an awkward moment.
What is wrong with you, Larry? You don't do something like that without asking me. You do not invite a sex offender over for dinner without talking to me first. We're not having a sex offender over for dinner, no. You need to call him and say no.
Cheryl, what would Jesus do?
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Susie Essman.
And I'm Jeff Garlin.
And we are doing season 5, episode 7, The Seder. And
yes.
And we start out with Larry's down at his front steps. It's the morning, and he's looking for something. He doesn't see it. And then he sees the neighbors across the street, older couple taking packages out of their car. And the neighbors are Pat Harrington, who plays Mac, and Jenny Ventris, who plays Ethel. Mac is, Pat Harrington is, of course, an old character actor and comedian. He was a stand-up, right?
He was a stand-up, yes. And
on One Day at a Time for many years.
On One Day, he played, I forgot the name of the character, the handyman around the building. He was very sweet to me, and I was very, anytime I get a chance to work with, I was a big, TV movie person.
Yeah. So
when I work with anyone that from my childhood, that stuff, I get very excited, and he was great. And, I always say he answered every question I asked.
Uh-huh.
I asked him what Bonnie Franklin was really like, and
No,
if she was a gentle lovemaker. I wanted to know how gentle
all
her
of those
was.
guys, what I remember about all those comedians when I was growing up is they were always on the quiz shows, on Password, and on,
to tell the truth,
the Match Game and all that stuff. And that's what I remember them from the most, because I didn't, where did we see stand-up except the Ed Sullivan Show? We didn't really.
Right. Well, the Tonight Show. And the
Tonight
Ed Sullivan
Show, That's true, Tonight Show.
And Merv Griffin.
Yeah.
And
Mike Douglas.
That's it. List is over.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Mike Douglas, do you know where he recorded his show from?
No, where?
Philadelphia.
Oh, that's right. I did know that.
Yeah. Philadelphia.
How interesting that is in a way.
It is really interesting, because I don't think there's been a show that's been actually based there of that type. Oh, no. I take that back. American Bandstand.
I was just about to say
it was
that.
from
Dick
there.
Clark from Mount Vernon, New York, where I was brought up. And who else grew up in Mount Vernon, New York?
Sheena Easton,
No.
Ben Vereen, and Scatman Carruthers.
Somebody you know very well.
Mount Vernon.
We both went to Mount Vernon High School.
Together?
No, he's 10 years younger than me.
So you dated?
No, we did not date, but
Well,
he's
by the
somebody
way,
you love.
The age
it's
range,
somebody
hold
you
on,
love.
Hold on, though. The age range of the guys you dated.
Many years ago. Yes. In my
was
youth.
always much younger than you.
But I did not date this gentleman. Happily, not because I'm happy I didn't date him.
Alan
but happily because,
Zweibel?
no, he's 10 years younger than me. You think Alan Zweibel is 10 years younger than me?
I think who?
J.B. Smoove.
Oh, J.B. By the way, would have never gotten that.
Yeah, I know.
J.B.
Who will be on our show later on.
We haven't
when
had
he
him
comes
on yet.
the show.
It's just occurring to me.
He hasn't been on.
Yeah.
He didn't come on until I think season 6.
Oh, right. He hasn't been on yet.
Yeah, he
so
hasn't
why would
been
he be
on?
on? Which, by the way, I look forward to that. I love that guy.
We love him. Anyway, so Larry reluctantly helps them, and they talk about the grape juice being a great antioxidant and underrated juice. And then Ethel, the wife, says,
Larry, did you know that a sex offender moved into the neighborhood?
Yeah, I saw his picture on a flyer.
I know, it's terrible.
Yeah, he's a bald guy, too.
Bald guy.
Yeah, a bald guy. It's very bad for the bald community.
Larry, what's very bad for the community is that he's a sex offender.
But I know, as long as he's going to be a sex offender, I wish he had a full head of hair, that's all.
Larry.
Larry, did you know that a sex offender moved into the neighborhood? And Larry says, yes, he saw his picture on a flyer. He's a bald man, and it's very bad for the bald community. And then he asked them, have you been getting your newspaper? And they have.
By the way, can I also say something here? Well, obviously I can. A phrase that's never caught on with the show, which is used repeatedly, and I find it so amusing, is the bald community.
The bald community.
The bald community. It's like what was the Big Johnson community?
Yes, that was JB.
That was the only other time we used a quote community. But the Big Johnson and the Ball community. I wonder if those communities ever do outreach programs.
I don't think that they're that cohesive, especially the Big Johnson community.
Well, by the way, you know who who runs the Big Johnson community?
Leon.
Horsecock Williams.
Yeah, exactly. So Larry established he hasn't gotten his paper in 6 days, and Ethel saw the guy who took Larry's paper. He was a man in a suit who came.
Maybe it's Horsecock Johnson, by the way. I don't remember.
I think it is Horsecock Johnson.
It's Horsecock Johnson.
It was a man in a suit,
it's not
and
Williams.
it was not Horsecock Johnson. It was a man in a suit. Horsecock Johnson doesn't necessarily wear a suit. Who took the paper?
No, you're bringing it back to this episode,
Yes,
which
I
I'm
am.
with you. I just am going back.
And Larry said, if you saw the guy again who took the paper, would you recognize him? And Ethel believes that she would. And then we cut to Larry and Jeff leaving a cafe, and he's telling you about a guy in a suit stealing his paper, and you're like, that makes no sense. You know, why does a guy in a suit, what's the motivation, you say? What's the motivation? And then Larry asks you, you're coming to the Seder. He's making the Seder for his father, and you say to Cheryl, if you know what she's doing. It turns out Susie is helping Cheryl. And Susie's sister and brother-in-law and their kid are in town, and the brother-in-law is a big-time conservative. And Larry says, bring them all to the Seder.
This episode has a lot of great scenes with you and your sister. Is there even a moment?
No, not really. So Larry says, bring them all to the Seder. And then you leave. And we've established
Wait a minute,
that.
you changed the sign behind you.
I did.
You rotate them every podcast?
Every couple.
Okay.
When I remember.
Okay.
When I remember. I only have 3.
Okay.
And then Larry's at a newspaper box, you know, the boxes that are on the street. You put the money in and you lift the thing up and they never work. And they're not working for him. He puts his money in and he's banging on it. And then a bald man comes over, very, very affable and smiley. And
which
he says,
is the actor, by the way, playing it.
Rob
All
Corddry.
he has to do, by the way, Rob Corddry, you just said, I was talking over it. But Rob is the most affable, upbeat gentleman you could ever meet.
And terrifically funny, as we shall continue to see. And he's like...
These machines are really finicky. Let me give you a hand with that.
No.
No, let me help you out.
I don't even care. I'm not, you know what? I don't even care.
No, let me get this. I know how to do it. I got the touch.
I don't even need to read it.
Watch. I just know how to do it. I know this machine. Go ahead.
You want one?
Yeah, but I'll close it again and pay for it because, you know, it's just...
Okay.
Yeah, those machines are really finicky. And Larry looks at him, and you could tell there's a moment of recognition when Larry looks at him. And he's like, you know, you want me to help? He's like, no. And then the guy helps him, and he's like, I've got the touch. And it opens easily. And Larry says, do you want one? And he says, no, I'll close it again and pay for it. So we're establishing that this man who is a sex offender has some kind of integrity.
Okay, so this is the second time I saw Larry cast this way, and that is with the nanny from hell. I don't know if I mentioned this when we were recording.
No, because you were actually not in that episode that we did of the podcast.
Lou taking over?
No, Sherry O'Terry recorded it with me.
Sherry took over, right.
Yeah.
Anyhow, there were 2 other actresses up for the role. One's gone on to be very famous. One is an icon in her own right. But Larry said the reason he wanted Sherry, who I'm a huge fan of, was because the character does some despicable things. Not despicable, but is insane.
Yeah.
And also he recommends her to you and I. Therefore, she has to be light and bouncy and funny. And you know, it was a good lesson. This is the same thing. You don't want to have the guy come off as creepy.
And sinister.
And Rob Corddry is... actually, it's hard to... I mean, look, whatever. It's hard to imagine. And well, by the way, they don't say pedophile, sex offender.
No, and I actually was looking for that because I didn't remember. They say sex offender, and sex offender could mean so many different things.
Yeah, but there's moments in this with him and children. But that's other people's interpretation.
That's other people's interpretation.
Yeah.
And nobody said pedophile, and nobody said rapist. He could have been a guy who was caught with porn in some unseemly. We don't know exactly what it was.
Let's take a step back. Thank God we're not at a point in this current age where you get, quote, caught with porn. Now, porn in terms of magazines, does it even remotely exist? I mean, even Playboy went out of business.
I was very carefully watching to see if anything happened that we found out. And nobody ever said pedophile or child molestation.
No, it's just sex offender. So
yeah,
we don't know.
Just sex offender.
But he wouldn't be a sex offender if he got caught with porn, Susie. You were being very polite.
All right. Well, I don't know what at that time,
well, let's say
whatever.
Something called his cock was involved in some way or another. And there's no funnier word, ask John Manfrotati, than the word cock.
John Manfrotati.
The way he says it is very funny.
So the sex offender does not take a newspaper. And then he introduces himself to Larry because he's a huge Seinfeld fan. And he's just like the biggest Seinfeld ever. And he loved Puffy's shirt. And he's how'd you come up with the low talker? He starts engaging Larry, and Larry, is very prone to responding to flattery.
Well, Larry loves flattery, period, real and off. But
the character I'm talking about.
No. But even Larry David, the guy, loves some if you're specific with something with him, that hasn't been asked a million times, he gets very excited. Such as I. When people recognize me and tell me how much I or the show is meant to them, wow, I am touched every time. People come up and go, "You're famous." I'm very nice. I'm not mean to anybody, but that, I zip in, zip out in terms of dealing with them. But if someone's really, my point there is, hey, people are fun, aren't they?
But in this episode, Larry is very responsive to this because Larry says,
but Larry the character always.
Yeah, Larry the character. He says, "How'd you come up with the low talker?" And Larry's like, "You want to know the truth? I was out to dinner with one, and this guy says, and then you write it down and you put it on the TV." And he's so impressed with that. He says, "I'm not an artist. It's incredible." And he introduced himself as Rick Lefkowitz.
The fact, also in the show, the fact that he refers to Larry as an artist.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, that's amazing.
Yeah. He introduces himself as Rick Lefkowitz, and it's really an honor, and Larry welcomes him to the neighborhood. And then Larry goes home, and Cheryl is making haroset. She's chopping up apples, and he says to her, "Wow, look at the Jew girl."
Hold on. Explain what haroset is for
haroset, it's a apple and nut and honey thing that you use on Passover.
And by the way, made correctly, delicious.
It is delicious.
And also it represents what?
I have no idea. I don't know any of these things. The sweet and the
sour.
Okay. So Larry says to her, "Look at the little Jew girl." And she says Susie's been coaching her and she's making haroset. And he's like, Cheryl says, "My mother would flip if she knew I was doing this." And then there was some kind of "you people." And, he says, "you people," she says, "you people," and Larry takes offense to that. So she's like, "you Jews," and it's a nice back and forth. And then she tells him that Marla and Mark got back together and that they're coming to the Seder tomorrow. And then he tells Cheryl, Susie's in-laws are coming. And then Larry realizes that he never followed through with his Christmas present to Mark. He got him a subscription to the New York Times, and after they broke up, he forgot about it, and he never followed through with it. And then he thinks,
I'll bet you Mark is the guy who's taking the paper. No, think about it. Seriously. Listen, think about it. I can't believe it. Mark is stealing the paper. Holy shit. Don't you see? Look. How long have we not been getting it? 6 days. He moved back in with her a week ago. You just said that, right? Who else would be doing it? It's him.
Mark is not stealing our newspaper.
No?
That is the most ridiculous.
I don't think so.
Oh, I think so. Larry, he's a doctor. I think he can afford the paper if he wants to get a paper.
But not if he's upset with somebody who promised him a gift for Christmas and never followed through on it.
That is so ridiculous.
Maybe it's Mark who's stealing the paper. He hasn't gotten the paper for 6 days, and Mark moved back in with Marla a week ago. The timing seems to work out. So Cheryl's like, he's a doctor. He can afford a paper. Cheryl poo-poos him. And Larry says, you know what we should do? We should invite Mac and Ethel to Seder. And now we know that Larry wants to invite Mac and Ethel to Seder because he wants Ethel to point out that Mark's been the one stealing the paper.
Well, that one we know from the get-go.
Yeah, but
sure.
Cheryl doesn't know this.
Yes.
And she's
but
like,
she does question it.
Well, and she's like, I had no idea you liked Mac and Ethel so much.
Yeah, and then she describes them as not the happiest neighbors.
And then Larry says, if Jews don't have anywhere to go for Seder, you're supposed to invite them, which I have heard that. That's true, correct?
Yes,
yeah.
It is.
And then Larry is at the store obviously doing a bunch of shopping for Seder stuff, and he's got a lot of packages, and it's awkward, and he runs into Rick Lefkowitz again, the sex offender. And Rick says, oh, let me give you a hand. He's just so affable. And he sees a golf club in Larry's trunk, and it says 4-iron, and Rick Lefkowitz plays golf, and Larry says he replaced his 4-iron with a 9-wood, and Rick wants to help him with his golf game.
No, but what is the exchange they have? He says, are you a golfer? And then,
do I live and breathe and eat? And, something like that.
No, he says, do I live and breathe and eat? And then he goes, that's all after golf or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So he's an avid golfer.
And by the way, that was a great improv right there. That was a great moment.
And he tells Larry that in his backyard, he's got a big setup with a camera to improve a swing. And he says, what are you doing right now? Nothing. Let's go. But Rick Lefkowitz doesn't have a car, so he has to get into Larry's car.
But no. But you're missing an important beat.
What?
It's just, do you want some Cheetos? And then he takes a bag of Cheetos from Larry.
Yes.
First off, the idea of Larry buying Cheetos is funny. And by the way, for those of you wondering, they were the crunchy Cheetos, not the puffy. And
I don't like Cheetos. They get all over your fingers.
Oh, no, I love the crunchy ones, but guess what? Can't have them. They're filled with MSG.
Yeah.
MSG.
Well, that's why they're delicious, because it's all the salt and the
puffy
MSG.
Ones, no MSG. There you go.
Wait, the puffy ones are not Cheetos. Those are cheese doodles.
No, the puffy ones, different company entirely.
So they are in the backyard, and they're watching in slow motion, and he sees his hips, what it was hips, and it's amazing. His whole golf swing has changed. It's an A+. Larry's thrilled. And then Rick says to him,
what are you doing for Passover?
Oh, I'm just having some people over.
Oh, really?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Nothing. Totally free.
You want to come to my house?
No. Really? Oh.
Well, all right.
Okay.
Huh?
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
You don't have to.
Great.
I
No,
mean,
that sounds great. I mean, I got nothing else to do.
You sure?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Yeah, I'll bring latkes.
Okay.
Great.
Say, so what are you doing for Passover? And it turns out Rick's doing nothing. And so Larry feels obliged, hesitantly, to invite Rick. And Rick says, you don't have to. And then he's like, no, come. And Rick says he's going to bring the latkes. And then he goes home.
By the way, a couple things. Larry thinks he's gotten away with it because Rick goes, I don't know. And Larry goes, okay. You know what I mean? He moves on.
Uh-huh.
But also, did you recognize where that little golf setup was?
No.
It's around the block in Brentwood. It's the house we used to always have lunch at. That's where, actually, we still did this past season.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it was behind there.
Well, let me just clarify for people. When on set, you have to feed lunch to 100 crew members. So it's always, the locations, it's always a major thing to find where you're going to have lunch. And there was one house near our TV house and Larry's TV house that would allow us to use their backyard. And we would set up tables there and have lunch there. Just so people know what we're talking about.
Not weird things, but unusual things is that house that we filmed in was empty, so we owned it. And that was kind of like having a soundstage, that house.
You mean Larry's house?
Larry's house, we own that house. You know, that owning means...
They didn't own it. They rented it.
No. That's not what I'm saying. You know,
Okay.
the term own means, do we own this? Wherever you film, you own it for the day. We own that for a whole season, which is very unusual. Like I could keep, if I had, let's say, a puppet collection, I could keep it in the basement there. Nothing would happen.
You know, our house, this particular season, I have
It's
no
a
memory
very
of.
fine house.
I have no memory of that house.
Wait,
We've had so
this
many
season?
houses.
Where
This
were
season
we?
that we're doing now, season 5.
Oh, where was this house? I
don't remember this house. We've had so many houses.
It was in the palace. No, you what house this? No, wrong one. Never mind. This was like one of the ones that was a season or two or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember it, but it wasn't.
So Larry goes home, and Cheryl says, "What took you so long?" And he tells her about this guy. He met this guy, and he changed his golf thing, and it changed his life. And he says he invited him to Seder, and Cheryl's like, "Oh, that's so sweet of you. He's alone. That was so kind of you." And then Larry says, "I forgot to mention."
No. Hold on. We think the scene is over. He walks up the stairs. Halfway up the stairs is when he says, "Oh, by the way."
I
and you know
forgot
what's
to
so
mention.
funny?
He's the sex offender.
I thought as I was watching it, I thought, if any one of us was in that situation, would we even bring up sex offender? You know, which, by the way, is funny, the way he defends
However,
it.
she would have known because the flyer's been out there.
Yeah, when he arrived, but not a minute before. But also, I think that's the angriest I ever saw her at Larry.
Oh, God, I don't blame her. You do not invite a sex offender over for dinner without talking to me first. And Larry says to her, "Cheryl, what would Jesus do?"
And that, by the way, that completely shut her up, which was really funny.
And then he says, "He's a Jew. He's a Jew. He's a Jew." And then we hear the klezmer music. Da, 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 da. And it is it's the Seder. And Larry is talking to my brother-in-law, who is Stephen Tobolowsky. Now, why don't you talk about Stephen Tobolowsky? Because I know you know him much better than I.
Stephen Tobolowsky is a character actor. Ned Ryerson, if you remember him from Groundhog Day, that was probably my favorite role he ever did. Ironically, I auditioned for that role amongst a few others in Groundhog Day. And obviously I did not get it, but he was on the Goldbergs with me. He played the principal of the school. But I'm talking about a guy that I've known since the 80s who is he's one of the great comedic character actors in Hollywood.
Terrific.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
And he starts going into Larry about the theory of 77.
Every 77 years, there's a great president. Washington, and then you go 77 years, Lincoln,
really?
77 years.
Yeah.
There's, what's that guy's name?
Theodore
FDR.
Roosevelt?
FDR.
FDR.
And then another 77 years, you got W.
Really?
And then I think we're in historic times.
Mm-hmm. Washington, Lincoln, FDR,
And W.
and George W. Bush.
That's right. And we're turning the whole damn world around.
How every 77 years is a great president.
By the way,
Washington, this was not in the outline.
really though?
I don't think so.
No, it's too absurd to be in the outline, and I love it.
So it's like
perfection.
Washington, Lincoln, FDR, and then George W. Bush every 77 years. And he's like, we're turning the whole damn world around.
Yeah, and by the way, really quite extraordinary, because and that was before all the conspiracy theorist stuff. That's what I'm saying. This was when it really was absurdism, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then his wife, my sister, says, "Did you remember to call your mother?" And Larry walks away, and you and Larry and Jeff, you just exchanged looks of like, "Ooh, this guy, whoa."
Yeah.
And then Larry walks over to Mark, who is played by Rob. Do you pronounce it Hubble or Hubel? I never know.
Hubel.
Hubel.
Hubel. Yeah. Rob is one of my favorite people and all right, in my book, I'm not talking about out there, but in terms of making me, and by the way, he does make people laugh and he's very popular, But for
he
me,
was on
Rob,
Transparent. He was on The League.
No,
He's been in a
no.
million things.
Yes, but that being said, he's one of those guys that has my number.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain people like Zach Galifianakis who I never ask, like, can you do that joke again? But when I watch him do stand-up, he destroys me, and in film. Yeah, as a matter of fact, a very underrated movie is, I think, called, is it The Candidate, The Election, with Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis. Jay Roach directed it, and Zach is so funny in that movie. Anyhow, Rob Hubel is one of those people that just has my number. So what I did to him on set, which he has never forgotten, would be, we'd all be sitting at the Passover table, and I would go, Rob, tell them that story of when you worked at the Oceanarium. And he would make up a story. Well, and the way he would do it, like the way he played characters when he said, Larry, I'm a doctor, with that kind of seriousness, he would tell the story. I must have done it to him, did it to him while we were working a dozen times. And there wasn't one time where it didn't drive me to tears. And then after he was done, he'd go, Jeff Garlin, with like a nod, like to everyone, like, why do you think I just did that? You know that feeling, except you always say no.
I don't say no. I just ignore you.
Okay.
All right. So Larry says to Mark, it's nice to see him and Marla back together. And then he asks him, you're a doctor. Do you see a lot of naked women? And Mark says, I'm a cosmetic surgeon. Yes. And Larry says, you ever get aroused? And he finds that a very inappropriate question. He's a professional. And then Larry says,
Tell me if you think this is an appropriate question, huh? And I mean no disrespect. Have you been stealing my newspaper?
Larry. Yes, that is an inappropriate
Okay,
question.
so that's two inappropriate questions, but have you?
I have
I'm
not
just
been
curious.
stealing your newspaper, Larry. That's appalling.
Really?
Yeah, really, Larry. I'm quite sure I haven't been taking it.
Are you positive, Mark?
have you been stealing my newspaper? And again, an inappropriate question, and they have a stare down.
And
then
by the way,
Jeff
this is
walks
one of my
over.
favorite stare downs for whatever reason in the history of the show.
Yeah?
But, I've never been a fan of the stare down until the rewatching of it, and now they all kill me.
Well,
stare
some
down.
of them work and some of them don't. I think,
Actually, I think, by the way, I disagree. As I've been watching the show, every one of them has made me laugh pretty heartily, if you will.
good.
Yeah.
So Larry, you and Larry start talking about, the brother-in-law, and I walk over with Sammy, and we all discuss, hey, he's quite a piece of work, the brother-in-law, and blah, blah. And Rick enters. Rick Lefkowitz enters
Well,
with
it's
the
a knock
latkes.
at the door, and Larry opens it.
Hey, there he is.
Somebody order latkes?
Look at this. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah. How are you?
Great, how you doing?
Very good.
Good to see you.
Yeah. This is nice.
Oh, yeah?
This is one of my least favorite moments on these shows that is just unnatural, infuriates me. It literally does. And I say, why are we shooting this like this? And that is, everyone, once he enters, everyone is in shock. Now, everyone includes people who don't live in the neighborhood, like your brother-in-law and your sister and the children. They've got the children involved. Everyone is looking with their mouths aghast, and they're all staged in a semicircle, and it's like, give me a fucking break. It's so false. Those things really infuriate me.
See, they don't infuriate me because I feel like it's just it's a comedic license.
What kind of
It's the
license here?
moments.
A bad license for a comedic.
So everybody stares at him, and Larry's like, this guy completely changed my life. So I pull Larry aside, and I just say, what the hell are you trying to pull, Larry? And he's like, he has nowhere to go. He's a good addition. He's got a great personality. He's like, starts like telling me, and I'm like, he should not be in our presence on a holy day. And then the doorbell rings, and Mac and Ethel come in. And Mac starts complaining, everybody parked in front of my house. Everybody parked in front of my house. And Ethel takes a look around the room.
Larry says
Yes, I
First
was
off,
just
he's
about to
very
say that.
angry. Hold on, though. He's very angry that everyone is parked in front of his house. And
Yes,
Larry
very
says,
angry.
You're here, and what does it matter? He goes,
What does it
they
matter?
couldn't find some other place.
No, because he's
Which,
just
by
a
the way-
curmudgeon. He's just a curmudgeon.
But by the way, that's really funny, and I believed it. Now,
yeah.
Larry says to her,
Take a look around the room. Is there
Now,
anybody that
when we
you
cut
recognize?
to the room, it's different people in conversation, which is what it should have been before when the whatchamacallit enters. Now, we don't know. She gets to the Robs, okay, who are talking, the two Robs, which I don't know what they're talking about, the plastic surgeon and the sex offender, but they're having a conversation, and then she sees
The
what
sex
we
offender.
know as a sex offender, but it could be the other one. That's why Larry.
I don't think so. I think she's upset about the sex offender.
No,
I don't think she would-
I'm saying, yeah, that's what we know she's looking
Yeah.
at. But Larry is like, is she shocked at seeing which one? And I think he pretty much knows, but that's why he keeps on wanting to wake her up so she can say
So
whether or not.
she wants to wake her up so she could identify Rob. He doesn't give a
but
shit
she
about the sex
faints.
offender.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, she
so
faints.
Ethel sees the sex offender and faints. And then they all carry her up to the room, and Rob checks on her, and she'll be out for a couple of hours. And Larry's snapping in front of her face and clapping and trying to wake her up. And then we cut to the Seder, and Shelley is reading the Haggadah. And I remember this day that Shelley had
Well, by
a
the way,
fucking
can
meltdown.
I also say something?
What?
The way you said the Haggadah is so Jewish that how could people not assume that you're very Jewish?
Well, I'm not religious in any way.
Well, by the way, you know where you don't come off religious and it's obvious is in the next episode.
Oh, yes.
When you
All
yes,
right, we'll get-
you don't.
but
Okay, we'll get.
I
to the next
remember this episode. I was so pissed off at Shelley because the prop people are putting the Seder plates, putting the Seder together, and they were Christian, both of them, Anne Marie and Dort. And Dort, who once said to you, "What's a yarmulke?" when he had to get yarmulkes. It was like a prior, probably, when we were doing the High Holy Days. He didn't even know what a yarmulke was. And
Well, by
Shelley
the way, you
goes,
say that the guy's never even seen. He's probably seen him and not questioned
not
what
know what
they're
it is.
talking-
But I remember
Yeah.
he said, "What's a yarmulke?" Anyway, they mistakenly put meat and dairy on the same
By the way,
plate.
ironically, he knew what a kippah was. Isn't that crazy? Didn't know
you're
what a
right.
yarmulke was, but knew what a kippah was.
And they put meat and dairy on the same plate because they didn't know. And Shelley got so nasty with them, yelling and screaming at them. He really pissed me off that day.
I forgot.
He really pissed me
Oh,
off. They're
my
prop
God.
people. They're doing their job. They made a mistake.
I remember so clearly, but I completely forgot that he lost his shit, which,
Yeah.
by the way, is in the next episode. Another version of it.
Yes, another version of that, but that was
storyline.
funny. But
Yeah,
this
but that was
was
on camera.
completely inappropriate of him to get so angry at these prop people
Yeah, but you're
who were
saying
just
it-
doing their job.
Okay. Shelley was an old man.
It pissed me off. I
Well, by
remember
the way, an
it.
old man, and Shelley has a history of being what us Jews call mashug, and
Yeah.
he was a comedic genius who sometimes got a little bit crazy.
Jeff, I'm giving a tidbit. So,
See, you say something funny, I laugh. So I guess nothing I'm saying is funny. Keep
so
going.
Larry says, I laugh sometimes. Larry says, "Get ready, kids. I'm going to hide the matzah, and whoever finds the matzah is going to get $1." And Larry goes to hide it. And as
And
Larry,
by the way, if I may, the mistake Larry makes, which a lot of adults do at Passover, and one of the things is that we do at Passover, which as a kid I loved, and I do remember somebody cheating in one of you find the matzah, you get $1. That's always been, probably today even, you find the matzah, you get $1. Or maybe now it's you find the matzah, you get an
5.
iPhone. An iPhone, no. In the houses on the west side. But Larry puts it in a drawer. You want to leave
it wasn't
in
a good
place.
hide.
Well,
It wasn't
no,
a good
the
hide.
proper hide is where it's out in the open, but you probably won't notice it because kids shouldn't be going through.
Okay, can I
drawers.
tell you my matzah story? because it was a
Well,
traumatic
by the way,
one.
let's take a step back. You're saying that as if we all have matzah stories.
Well, I'm going to tell you my matzah story, whether
No,
you
but,
have
but
one
I
or not.
don't have a matzah story. Most people don't have a matzah. I've enjoyed matzah. I like putting butter on a lightly salted matzah. But that
How about
being
matzah
said,
brie? You like matzah brie?
I love my mom's called fried matzah. I didn't know it was matzah brie till years later. That's what I'm saying about my house. Although we were.
All right, so I'm
anyway.
5 years old.
What is this your matzah story? Excuse me for interrupting. This is your matzah story.
Yes, it's my
correct?
matzah story. I'm 5 years old.
Who doesn't
and
love
my
it?
mother,
Hold on. Do you know what young people love?
a good matzah story.
A good matzah story.
And
Keep
my
going.
mother didn't just hide one piece of matzah. She hid matzah all over the house, so everybody got to find the matzah, so nobody was left out. And I was the youngest. All my cousins and siblings were older than me. So everybody goes to my grandfather with the matzah, and he gave them each $5. And I was 5 years old, and he gives me $1. And then I see my cousin Debbie has a 5, and I went over to my grandfather, and I was like, how come she has a 5 and you only gave me $1? And he went, oh, that was a mistake. And I knew he was lying, the motherfucker. I knew he was lying, and he was just being cheap with me, like tried to save $4 because I was only 5 years old. And I never liked him from that moment on.
All right, let's take a step back. That's not a matzah story. That's a broken relationship with a grandparent.
Correct.
Story. Which, by the way,
Matzah.
Matzah story could be a sort of pseudonym for a grandfather. And by the way, in all sincerity, did you ever get along with him after that?
No, I didn't like him after. I got along with him fine, but I didn't like him and I didn't trust him.
So
and,
so through saving $4, he
blew his
destroyed
that's
relationship with his granddaughter.
And don't think children are stupid. They're really smart and they know exactly what's going on.
There's only one thing you shouldn't do with children, and that's sarcasm, because kids don't get sarcasm. You know, they're very literal. I mean, yeah, they are. And
but I knew he was like, it was a mistake. I knew he was lying.
What a douchebag. Do you know that later that afternoon I got in a fist fight with him? I did.
So,
and then he handed me $4 for a fight well fought.
$4. So Larry hides the matzah in the drawer, and the brother-in-law is walking out of the bathroom and sees where Larry hid the matzah at that moment. And then he's, okay, kids, start looking. And Larry sits back down, and Max says to him, any luck with finding the guy stealing your paper? And Larry says, no luck at all. And Max says, my wife got a really good look. She never forgets a face. And all of a sudden, Mark starts to get choky. He starts to choke. Hopefully, she'll wake up soon. And the kids are looking for the matzah in the bedroom where Ethel is asleep, passed out. And Larry walks in. He says, all right, kids, beat it. No matzah here. And he's trying to wake her up. He's jumping on the bed and he's playing congas. I don't know where the congas came from.
Let's just take a step back. Again, the idea that Larry David has congas in a guest room. This stuff always irritated the fuck out of me. Because, look, there are, where you sort of go, okay, come on, let's just let that go. Larry David playing congas. By the way, always a funny visual. But again, what show is this? It's just, the tone is off. And I get crazy
I have a
about
conga in my office, Jeff. Bet you didn't know that.
I did not know that. But if we knew that, never mind.
Anyway, he's trying to wake her up. She's out. And then he goes back down to the table and he lies. He says, Ethel should be down soon. And Mac was like, what was all the noise? And Larry's, my foot fell asleep. And all of a sudden, Mark looks at his pager and he has to go. And Larry's like, very suspicious. He didn't hear anything. And
by the way, I love his excuse. I keep the volume very low, Larry.
Yes, and it's on vibrate. And Larry's like, aren't you a cosmetic surgeon? He's like, I have an emergency. I have to go.
As I explained, I've been paged by
Yes,
my
I know. Emergency boob job, no doubt.
I've been paged for a medical emergency because I am a doctor.
Yes, you're a doctor. Yes, of course, you're a doctor.
It's a medical situation.
Yeah, you're lucky that old lady fainted.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You took that paper. I know you did.
I'm a doctor, you idiot.
And he leaves. Then suddenly Stevie, my nephew, finds the matzah. And Larry's like, what is it? Was it an emergency boob job? You're lucky that old lady fainted. And he's like, I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor. Then Rick wants to speak privately. Rick, the sex offender, wants to speak privately to Larry. And
by the way,
he's got a difficult moral quandary.
For me, the moments with Rick are the funniest in the show.
Oh, they're hilarious.
But Rob does a great job. But in terms of tone, the curb tone, and the irony of him being a sex offender, partnering up with Larry, these are the best moments. And my two favorite moments are this and what follows. So go with this.
So Rick is like, he's in a moral quandary and he's very serious. And Larry's like, I'm not the right person to talk to. And Rick was like, I saw something shocking. And
then that's what piques Larry's interest. At first,
shocking.
He thinks he's saying something about being a sex offender.
Right.
And then he's like, what? What happened at my house?
And he said he saw the father whisper something in Stevie's ear. And then right after that, Stevie found the matzah. And Larry's like, okay, I'll take it from here. He's very, he's going to take care of this. And Larry sits back down and Stevie asks for his $1. And Larry's, what made you go back to the bookcase a second time, Stevie? And his father's like, pay up, with that accent. He found the matzah, so pay up. And like Larry's, you told him where it was. And how do you know? My friend told me. And somebody,
No. You told him where it was. How do you know? He turns to Rob. This is my favorite moment in the whole show. And Rob reluctantly, like, it needs to be done. He gives him a nod of it needs to be done.
Yeah.
See, I love the little things like
the subtle
the episode, like where Phil Rosenthal, when Kevin Nealon comes rushing in and he's angry
takes
at the
orange.
and Phil just looks up at him. I took an orange, and it's just perfection.
And then I think it's the brother-in-law who says, your friend, the convicted sex offender.
My friend told me, that's how I know. He saw you whisper in your son's ear and then watched as he ran to the bookcase and got the matzah.
Oh, your friend, the convicted sex offender. You take him. You were on Cupid Minor with him. You and your suck buddy.
Oh my God, there's something wrong with Sammy. Sammy, get up. Come on. What's the matter, honey? What is it? She can't breathe. Does anyone know mouth to mouth? Oh my God.
I do.
And then all hell breaks loose and everybody's and then suddenly Sammy, who's at the kids' table, is choking. She can't breathe. And I'm like, Sammy, does anyone know mouth to mouth? And Rick says, I do.
And then what happens at that moment? Everyone stops and stares at him as the little girl is
As Sammy's
choking.
still choking.
I see, this is the shit that makes me fucking nuts. All right, well, it's a comedy. We guess we can't have a real choking child. But
well, she lived because we know she's in future episodes.
Well, she also faked having a bone. So
and then it's the next morning and his paper is there. Down on the front steps. He opens the paper and he sees an article in the bottom of the fold. It says, emergency surgery, sees emergency surgery to reattach hand. Doctor leaves Seder.
Okay. Now,
not the greatest ending.
No, it's for an ending, no. But I believe, I give up, that's not going to make the front page. But for comedic purposes, I'm okay with that being on the front page. I just hate when bongos and children choking, people in a neat semicircle staring. And by the way, what made me really upset about the staring, as I mentioned, is the fact that a lot of those people didn't know he was the sex offender. And that, I just get, all right.
You know what, Jeff? I know that this was not your favorite. I enjoyed this episode, but I guarantee you that you're going to love the next episode that we're doing.
Well, by the way, because I know it's one of our favorites. And also, I would say it's in our top 5 in terms of fan favorites.
And also believe...
hold on. I've heard that term for years. I never thought I would say fan favorite, also describing my show. Our show. Fan favorite. But it is a fan favorite.
It is a fan favorite. And it's a Larry David favorite. And you'll have to come listen to us next week to find out what it is.
Please do, and I appreciate you listening.
Bye.
Bye.